care about current affairs, it's on the Oshow. And when you want to get clear what's going on here, it's on the Oshow. If you like to stay in the know, tune yourself into the Oshow. It's the Oshow. Laura Babcock's the Oshow.
Welcome to the Oshow. I'm Laura Babcock. This is Canada's current affairs show with strong opinions. And one of our returning guests who always brings some passion and fact to the conversation is Kojo Damptey. Kojo has been on the program over the past few years in various roles. He was the head of the Hamilton Centre for Civic Inclusion. He also ran for candidate in a Hamilton race. And now Kojo is at McMaster University in charge of the acting director. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Kojo, for the community engagement there at McMaster. And Kojo, you're on the program today for two different reasons. One is that you sent out a press release a few weeks ago, your ongoing critique around policing in our city, and I want to discuss that. But I also want to talk to you off the top, if we can, about an unusual action that was taken by the Hamilton Centre for Civic Inclusion and the Hamilton Anti-Racism Committee out of the City Hall. And your organization at McMaster Community Engagement also signed on to this. And this was a letter warning the community about a tour coming up by the group Diagolon. Welcome back to the Oshow.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the invitation. Always good to be back and provide listeners and watchers some important information. So first off, I think when the U.S. State Department deems an organization such as Diagolon an extreme alt-right violent organization, I think everyone needs to know, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is that Diagolon has had stops in other cities. And I think the prevailing sentiment was that people didn't know about the group, right? So in Ottawa, and I think in one of the cities in BC, they found out after the fact. And organizations like the HCCI, Hamilton Center for Civic Inclusion, HARC, Hamilton Anti-Racism Resource Center, DJNO, Disability Justice Network of Ontario, said, hey, we don't want that same situation to happen here in Hamilton where something happens and then everybody is reacting after the fact. So I think those three organizations felt it was necessary to provide information to residents and to say, hey, if you have a public venue and you do not espouse some of the rhetoric and some of the comments that have come from this group, it's best that you do not rent your venue to them. And again, this goes back to the incident that happened in Ottawa. They rented a venue, and after the event was over, the owner was like, "Oh my God, I didn't know that this is what the group espoused. And if I had known, I probably wouldn't have rented the venue out." So that's the same thing that we're doing here to say, hey, something is happening. If you don't espouse these values, best to make your own informed decision. And that's why the letter was shared. And we also wanted everybody to know, so other organizations have also signed on, the Social Planning Research Council, the Office of Community Engagement at McMaster, some other coalitions have signed on too, because we know that some of the language coming from the group has been very problematic.
So has there been pushback to the organizations that put out that letter? Are you aware, Kojo, that there's been this, this kind of, it's just a joke, why are you doing this?
Yeah, I mean, I can't, I'm not involved in any of those organizations operationally, but what I can say is that your comment about them saying it's just a joke, yes, we've definitely heard that. We've seen that on various platforms, and I think people need to realize that the comments about it being a joke or a meme or all of these things, those are ways to attract people, right? And then on the podcast and these meetings and what have you, and that's when they engage in the dangerous rhetoric. And I also want people to know that the political discourse is also adding to kind of this acceleration way of looking at things. So, for example, they will say, hey, the federal government is not dealing with the opioid crisis, but then they are doing A, B, and C. And so people get enraged about that. We have an encampment issue. Then they will say, yeah, the federal government is not doing that. So emotionally, people understand that frustration, and that is how these groups recruit people based on the frustration. So it starts off as a joke, as a meme, and all of that, and then before you realize, they've reeled in people that are frustrated with all three levels of government and now are engaged in that rhetoric.
So is the
Mhm.
hope around the warning around this Diagolon tour to say to people, in case you're thinking it's a joke or missing some of the other things or what the US government has said about them, we want you to be fully aware of what goes on, because it reminded me a little bit of the Summer of Hate when we had to stand up against the yellow vesters at City Hall until they eventually shut up and moved on, right? So
Yes.
I'll do that again. I'll show up if I have to. I just want to know kind of what's your best advice about how we should be navigating this moment in our country and also this specific moment in our city.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think that if the letter that was sent out was also to encourage people to also make statements and find ways to get that information out there. So we didn't want to be prescriptive. So if people want to write letters to the editor, if they want to hold an event, if they want to do all these alternative things, they are more than welcome to. And I'm sure HCCI and HARC and DJNO will collaborate with them, so they can reach out to those three organizations. The other thing too is just to realize that, like, um, yeah, we're living in dangerous times where information can be put out anywhere, any form, anyhow, right? Even on social media, some of the folks that support these groups or even say that it's a joke, they don't even have profile pictures, right? So it's like if you don't have profile pictures and you're telling us something, whereas I have a profile picture and you can exactly see what I'm saying, then that's what people should also take into consideration. So I think that's a key point. And I hope our elected officials on all levels too will come out and say something, right? Like if they don't, it's going to be a problem. And also their lack of work is also what's contributing to the groups like this forming. And for this group in particular, I would just let people know that some of their members are ex-military members. So this is not other groups that just are sitting in their meeting up, just talking about stuff. Some of them have some training. So I'll just want people to say, hey, like, just be extra careful and be safe. Say what you want to say, provide your information, but just know that they have access to certain things that maybe we are not usually accustomed to. So,
What is the risk level, do you think, in Canada? What are you hopeful, or are you quite, concerned that we haven't seen the worst of this stuff yet?
ah, that's a big one. I wouldn't put an adjective in front of it. What I would say is that I think people need to be very active. People need to pay attention, right? Next year we're going to have a federal election that's going to be very, very, very antagonistic, if I could use that description. And prior to that, as you've mentioned, everybody's looking at what happens south of the border, right? And so I think, and then in 2026, maybe there might be a provincial election. Maybe it might be
Maybe
next
sooner,
year. Who
maybe sooner
knows?
than you think.
Yes,
Yeah.
who knows? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think I think the because it's been sucked in by politics. Politicians also use that to garner votes. I think we saw an MPP that a PC MPP that was kicked out of caucus for meeting
Mhm.
with an outright individual, right? So I think people have to be extra vigilant. We have to understand what's going on, and most importantly, also not not take what politicians say as the final value, right? So even on all issues, whether it's encampment, opioid crisis, the affordability issue, housing, all of these things. If let's take housing for example, everybody says they know how to fix it, but they never do anything about it, and we are where we are, right?
Oh,
So
horrifying.
don't fall for the I can fix it language. Maybe ask what have you done, and if they haven't done anything to show that they haven't fixed it, then look for an alternative, right? So to me, that's where we need to kind of veer to, looking up into the rest of this year and next year.
Let's get to the press release that you put out about racism in policing, or the overrepresentation of the Black community.
Yeah, so the main point was that Black populations are overrepresented in use of force data.
Mhm.
And so the first thing is that this is something that um Black populations and communities have always said, right? But in 2020, the Solicitor's General Office asked police departments to start collecting race-based data. Okay. To say, hey, let's collect this data and let's see if it's true, right? So that happens, and um we see that Black and Indigenous and other races populations are overrepresented. So the question was, okay, what are you going to do as a police institution? What is the Solicitor General's office going to do? You've said police departments should collect this data. They start collecting the data. We see it, and every year the numbers say the same thing. And so from my perspective, when I delegated at the police board, I was asking the board to say, as the oversight body of the police service, what are you going to do, right? The chief has had various meetings, and I said this at the board too. He has had various meetings since 2020 with various community members, the Black community as well. And we've said point blank, what are you going to do? He has said he's doing a race-based identity strategy, but that doesn't solve the problem. And I can guarantee you can clip this for next year. Next year, the report will come out and it will be the same. And so my question to the board is, how can you be a board, an effective board, when these things keep happening? And so I did some analysis of the data to also show that this is a serious issue. So 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, the numbers bear it out. And also people keep on saying that and I think this has been the sentiment even from the former chief, Eric Gert, was that, Black communities, that's where crime is at. So obviously that's why they are overrepresented. But then if you look at the number of incidents every year, it's white, white populations are the ones that commit the highest number of incidents. So that is not the argument. The argument is that if the Black population makes 5% of the entire population in Hamilton, 5%, right? And then in a 1% chunk, because the use of force data, the police keep on telling us that those interactions are less than 1% of their interactions. So in less than 1% of your interactions, if more Black folks are appearing there, that means that you have a problem, right? So that is what we were, or I was trying to let people know, and the board and our community members, to say, hey, these are some serious issues, and we need the police to really understand what is going on. And some of that work should also be done by the community. So those were some of the points that I was trying to make to the community and to the board.
And what is it that you want them to do differently?
Well, one thing could be that all of this information should come to community, right? There are so many Black-led organizations, Indigenous-led organizations, and other racial organizations, racialized organizations that could look at what is actually going on and provide some recommendations. One of the recommendations that we've actually said is there should be an independent group that takes a look at this information to then come up with some specific recommendations. We are told that they're engaging in training. Well, training doesn't always solve the problem. You can train somebody, but if they're not willing to let go of some of their biases and how they perceive people, and we saw that in the data as well. One of the paragraph the graphs that I had was the number of police officers called when it was a Black resident versus when it was a white resident. So when they get a call and it says 6 foot or 6'5" Black male, 250 pounds, looks like he has a weapon, it looks like everybody is like, oh, uh uh this is probably a dangerous person, versus, oh, 6'5" white, or white male or white female. Oh, I'm sure we can talk them down, we can do that. So that was present in all of the data. The number of police officers present when Black residents were interacting with police officers was huge versus when it was white individuals. And I read one incident at the police board, and I know, again, it's 1 out of 200 and whatever incidents, but it also speaks to what we're dealing with. Somebody calls the police and says, I see a Black guy who looks like he has a weapon. The police show up, they don't ask any questions, and then they point a gun at the person, and they find out that they didn't have any weapon. So now you tell me, if you are that individual, the next time you have an interaction with the police officer, what is that going to look like, right? So that I was using that example to illustrate. Councillor Pauls asked me, why am I talking about this when I'm not a police officer, as if I don't interact with them, right? So I think this is the lack of information that sometimes the board even have, right? The board members don't even understand what it means for certain populations. We think about the indigenous man who was stomped, his head was stomped on. The next time he has an interaction with a police officer, what do you think that is going to look like? Is he going to be nervous? Is he going to look the other way, right? And then if he looks the other way and that police officer feels like they are not being respected, what's the next move? And those are the things that we are trying to talk about when we are discussing these issues. I think the next suggestion here, and this goes to the Solicitor General's office, is that, you know, if they are going to be collecting such data, I think there needs to be an understanding of what it means, because the current way that is being done is still not the preferred option. And what are the repercussions for police officers that engage in use of force in ways that are not beneficial, right? Uh, we saw the incident in the States with Sonia Massey, where she's calling for help and she ends up getting murdered by a police officer. And I think those are some of the things we've seen in some of the data here. So I think is there's two levels. One, on the local level, we need more independent oversight on how this data is collected and what should be done. And then on the provincial level, the Solicitor General's office needs to really rethink what they're going to do with this data and how they collect the data and who even owns the data. When it comes to policing in Ontario, there needs to be a rethink of um, what police accountability looks like. So what do I mean by that? So you've said, is it a political discussion? Well, you see, at the police board, the only person that answers to the police board is the chief of police, right? So if the chief of police says, you know what, these are the steps I have taken to address this, all they can say is, oh, okay, great. And then they will in the next 5 years they're going to grade him on all the things that he said he was going to do, right? So I think it's very difficult for a board to say, okay, you are going to do A B C D, but as a community we have to ask for ABCD and show that this is the issue with policing right here in the city. So I think that's why in some studies, and people have written about this, is that police boards in Ontario also need to change, because you just have councillors and the mayor uh, who decide what the chief of police does. And if the chief says, I'm doing a great job,
Right, I know.
they are gonna say, cool, you're doing a great job, right? Like it's it's hard for the politicians to say you're not doing a great job. That's going to cause lots of friction, right? So they end up just saying, yeah, you're doing a great job. And then we, the community, are left wondering what is going on. And that's what you are seeing at the board level. So I think a restructuring of what the board actually looks like and what's the relationship between politicians and the chief of police, right? And then, as I said, the Solicitor General's office also need to rethink what it is, how accountability looks like. One of the data points too that we realized was that police officers that have served for less than 5 years are the ones that are always using use of force. So to me, that says, okay, with new officers, they are quick to use force versus maybe the officers that have been on the force for a longer time. So again, what are you going to do about that? So I think these are some of the questions that we are raising. And if maybe there was an astute politician there, they probably would have contacted the Solicitor General or talked to their MPP to say, hey, maybe these are things that they should look like. So I think overall speaking, when we're talking about police accountability in Ontario, it needs a major, major rethink.
To be free in this country is to have your rights protected, right? And to have the people who are paid to protect you and to serve you. And I don't think we should ever take our foot off the pedal when it comes for demanding an equitable and a just society. So Kojo, last word to you, my friend, and thank you again, of course, for your time.
My last word would be that, I think people need to um, work with other people and understand where other people are coming from. Our world is going to be very different. I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, we saw what happened in Toronto, where streets and people's houses were flooded.
Yeah.
I saw a video of Toronto City Hall, and they had leaks in their building, and so it tells me that our leaders are not paying attention. I talked about I have mentioned this in the past, is that we need leaders that are going to be bright thinkers and bring solutions. If our leaders don't bring solutions, then it means they're not paying attention. And so that means that the onus is on us to start talking about our solutions, developing our solutions. I've said, in Hamilton here, if we were to have a big flood, like what we saw in Toronto,
Yeah.
who are you going to call? Do you have faith that when you call your elected official, they'll give you the right answer? Probably not. But um, if there are local organizations that you can call, then you know that those are the organizations that we need to work with, and we need to build coalitions outside of the political way of doing things, because we can't always trust that they will do what they say. So I think
Are you gonna
uh,
run again for politics? Are you? I will
oh,
ask you every time you do the show.
everyone, yes, everyone keeps on asking that. At this time, I'm just focusing on some of the projects that I'm working on. I think yeah, there are lots of projects that I'm doing that are really giving me hope. I'll share this with your listeners. The Board of Health, right? Next, in a couple of months, you're going to have a public health committee that's going to be made up of counselors and community and health experts. Who would have thought, right?
Yeah,
Who would have thought? So sometimes too, it's like we just have to keep trying. And it
absolutely.
doesn't matter whether you're elected or not, you can still make change happen. So to me, that's kind of the vibe that I'm on right now. And I hope others can also feel that vibe. And then we just make positive change. We make positive.
I love your vibe, as always, and I love the fact that you pointed out a success, right? Because like with the green belt, that big scam got stopped because people stood up. I never think that anything is a fait accompli. I never think anything can't be reversed or changed or stopped or with political and public pressure, because I think I mean, that's the point of being active in a democracy, right? We're allowed to speak up and we're allowed to demand change and to keep pressing for the good outcomes. And I love that you gave me a non-answer, which means that, there's still a possibility of Kojo Damptey on a ballot coming to you soon, Hamilton, or who knows
That
where else.
that wasn't a non-answer. It was like we gotta look at now. When we get there, I'll let you know.
All right. I hope I'll be one of the first on your press release. All right. Thank you so much, Kojo Damptey, again for doing the Oshow, and for all of you who subscribe and listen on Apple and Spotify and in countries around the world. We love it because this is, as Elizabeth May said on the last podcast, we are working on all these problems as a planet. They affect all of us, from climate change to poverty to racism to fascism, all of it. So we need to work together. So I appreciate all of you so much. And on the next Oshow, we're going to have one of our very best critics, Graham Crawford, who has a way of looking at things and describing them that is always super popular with our audience and often repeated for years to come. So I can't wait to hear what Graham Crawford has to say about the state of our world on the next Oshow. Thanks so much, Kojo. Take care.
When you care about current affairs, it's on the Oshow. And when you want to get clear what's going on here, it's on the Oshow. If you like to stay in the know, tune yourself into the Oshow. It's the Oshow. Laura Babcock's the Oshow. With a lot of great guests, she puts them to the test on the Oshow. There's no doubt they'll be calling them out on the Oshow. Stand for something or fall for it all. Ontario, hear the call on the Oshow. It's a podcast, the Oshow. Laura Babcock's the Oshow. Stay informed with the Oshow, Oshow.
Your merch bid.